Part of what we do, Adam, you want to jump in? I've been talking a lot. You want to run this
You go
slide?
ahead. Keep going.
Okay. Part of what we do is we take these very local experiences, these rich stories around some of our local voices and our local heroes, and we try to then also bring in these more, if for lack of a better term, academic topics, so that the teachers who are talking about this stuff have some tools, and the young people have the opportunity to think about these complicated ideas or ideas that are not so complicated, but then also able to think about them in real time and on the ground. So we talk a little bit about human migration. Obviously, if we talk about the Black experience, we have to bring up the Great Migration, and we have to bring up the connections between the southern region and the northern region, and how our families cyclically move back and forth. Obviously, when we think about the urban landscape, we have to be mindful of topics such as gentrification and urban development and planning, and how we have been impacted by that, but also how our communities have engaged with those processes for the betterment of the communities. But ultimately, we're talking about community, culture, neighborhood, and as you all have highlighted, family in so many ways. And so what we're trying to do is provide these rich local stories that then give us a window into some of these broader, more sophisticated and somewhat academic ideas. And so if you have any thoughts about any of those topics, please always feel free to share. Always feel free to point us back to topics like migration or urban development. We know that you all have been involved in a whole range of those practices. But really, let's go ahead and get started into some of our questions that will move us along. And so we chunk these in 15 to 20 minute blocks. And so now we're moving into our next chunk, if you will. Adam, why don't you take over for a sec?
Well, why don't we, Manan and Zakia, what we'd love to do now is just hear a fuller version of your story into your life with food and where you are today. Manan, Zakia already knows this. I went on Facebook through the Juice Kitchen Shindig Facebook page, and I stacked up 25 images that kind of start at Amaranth and end in the current world you're in now. Which one of you wants to go first?
I can talk. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about in terms of, and I mentioned this a little bit in my introduction, is that my journey in terms of food really just came as a mother, all right, and wanted to provide the absolute best, for my children. And as you grow, you have an opportunity to be able to grow and provide even more, for that. So my goal as a chef as well as a mother was to go ahead and create delicious vegan food so that you would even quote unquote miss meat. Okay.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And so like on this picture that you see here, those are actually what we call vegan ribs. Okay. Absolutely no meat product whatsoever. It's actually made from flour, gluten flour. Okay. And it's a process, but it's absolutely delicious. I've never had anybody who did not like it, including those people who, still consume meat.
Yeah.
Right? So, go ahead.
I was going to just ask, so we're going to see some of these images. This is at the Body and Soul Healing Arts Center.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your decision of getting into veganism at all in the first place? Because especially 30 years ago, right, that might have felt kind of out on the margins.
It was ahead of the game.
It was, and especially it takes the kids, to really talk about being vegetarian and, pulling up to a Burger King and asking for a Whopper with no meat on it, or
let me get the bun and some lettuce.
And tomato sauce.
Extra sesame seeds.
So it takes them to talk about it, as well as a conversation I had that I moderated about a month or so ago with Ayanna Gregory, who is Dick Gregory's daughter. Mm-hmm. And so she echoed the same thing that my children now echo too, in terms of how, other people would talk about them and they were made, to go ahead and feel weird.
Sure.
And so with the Body and Soul Center, which no longer exists, it was the one of the first places that I actually started vending, and that was from invitation to by Venus Williams. she had had my food. She knew, you know, that I love to cook. And she just say, hey, why don't you come? We have this market on Saturday. Why don't you come and set up and see, you know, and see what happens? And that's what I did. And that's how I got started. That particular picture there, I think, well, it was at an event. It was at a catered event. And so I was really excited about the opportunity to be able to share what it is that I've known and learned, you know, throughout these years. But again, starting out, I did good. I mean, the kids ate it, they survived. But there were some things that there's some things that they might even talk about today, like, Mama, you really gave us, you know, whatever it was. But
Stuff
anyway,
like this and this.
That was good.
yeah,
That's all
yeah.
right.
Well, see, and that was the other thing. I was through Fondy Market. Fondy Market used to have what was called a greens cooking contest,
Hmm.
and so one year I decided to go ahead and enter it just to see, you know. And so I entered the greens cooking contest, and that first year I took second place, right? And I was surprised, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna do it again next year. I did it next year. I took first place, and I held first place for a few years until I decided, like, okay, somebody else needs to have that opportunity. But that was one of my specialties, and it still is to being able to prepare greens. And for the listening audience, we're talking about collard greens, mustard turnip greens,
Yeah.
spinach greens, potato
Yeah.
greens, you know,
Come
all
on.
those things that traditionally in our culture, people had to prepare or thought they needed to prepare with meat. You know, they
Hmm.
even
Hmm.
had uh,
Pork.
yeah, pork. I was trying to
Yeah.
think the specific name of it, but anyway, yeah, they had some type of pork product. Couldn't imagine themselves, you know, preparing greens without. This is trips me out sometimes. Turkey butts. I'm like turkey
Yeah.
butts, but anyway,
Yeah, you can get cussed out at a family
hey,
gathering for bringing some greens without pork in it. You know.
yeah, yeah, or smoked turkey tails or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? And I do teach people, you know, how to do this. And so I put my greens that are made with absolutely no meat, no dairy products whatsoever up against anybody's ham hock. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody said smoked ham hock. Yeah.
Mr. Kia, let me ask you a question. You mentioned a couple places, and I think it's important for us to, particularly for the young people who are going to be listening in and those who are with us now, Alice's Garden and
Yes.
Fondy Market.
Yes.
Can you just talk about the significance of those institutions, and then Manan, if you want to add some comments too, because I know you have some thoughts on this. We want to make sure we shout out those entities and icons and places in our city, and can you talk a little bit about those two for just a second? Alice's Garden and Fondy Market.
You want me or Manan to talk? You want me
Go
to
ahead,
talk?
please start, Mr. Kia. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Well, Fondy Market is the largest, I think, outdoor farmers market that we have, you know, here in Milwaukee, and it's an absolutely wonderful place, you know, to be. Again, there's some restrictions now because of the pandemic, but being able to go there, it's almost like a festival too. It's a happening too, when you run into people who have the same thing in common. They're looking for, you know, good fresh food, and there at Fondy Market, you can get food directly, you know, from the farmers. Everything that they sell, they have to have produced, you know, themselves. They have food demos, and I've been a part of that, which is really good because sometimes you see food at the market. It's like, okay, this looks pretty interesting, but I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
okra leaf. You know, I never knew that that the leaf from the okra plant is actually edible. Okay. And I learned that, I discovered that at the Fondy Market. And so, yeah, I do an okra stew with okra leaf
Mm.
now. And so, having the demo, the opportunity to learn, have people who, again, aren't accustomed to eating fresh vegetables, um, actually taste the food and say, "Oh, this is really good," and then being able to hand them a recipe and say, "Well, this is how you do it to make it
Yeah.
really simple." That's been really, really good. So, you know, Finding Market is a real gem that exists in our community. The other one I want to mention too is Trickle B Cafe.
Yeah.
Actually, let's
Okay,
get to.
yeah,
I think I got some of these plates are from like this plate. That's a very trickle B looking plate right
it
there.
is. It is. That's Trickle B Cafe, and that's probably something I did do that. Yeah. Uh, and at Trickle B Cafe, what's significant about that is Trickle B is a pay what you can cafe. And so this particular pay here looks like it has vegan chicken on it. It has a soup, might be carrot ginger soup. It has a rice ball with tempeh on it. That's what those two little bacon strips look like. A salad and a muffin. Everything totally vegan. Even the cream that's in the soup, non-dairy, everything. And the great thing about Trickle Bee is that it's a pay what you can. And I'm the chef there every Friday. I volunteer there every Friday to go ahead and
Good to
prepare
know.
food for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
then with at Alice's Garden,
Yeah.
where I'm at every Tuesday, I also have a plot where a lot of the greens that I'm talking about, I actually grow. Okay. One of the things I'm proud of this year is red okra. And most people are like, what? Yes, red okra. It's absolutely, delicious. And the leaf, as I said, is edible too. And being able to make an okra stew, and people are like, ooh, I do not like okra. Well, you haven't tasted mine, so that's why you say that. But anyway.
Yeah.
Manon, jump in. Talk to us a little bit about Alice's Garden and some of the other urban farming you've been up to.
Alice's Garden. Say it again.
I said, yeah, go ahead and talk about Alice's Garden for us.
Yeah, Alice's Garden is a fantastic place. It's right in the heart of the kind of the Walnut Way, Lindsay Heights, Walnut area. It's in the back of the Brown Street School Academy, and it houses a number of plots for people who are live, work, serve, play in the community. It also has strong affiliations to Fondy Food Market, also Walnut Way Conservation Corporation. But besides that, it has a pavilion in that whole, mall, having meetings out there just for our men's group that I was running at Walnut Way Conservation Corporation a couple of years ago. So it has a significant amount of potential because it's right in our neighborhood and everybody sees it. So you bring your ideas and your thoughts into this into this garden, and they don't shun you. I think one thing about our community is that we have a lot of ideas, and if we're able to ground those ideas in the ground, then we can prosper as a community. And gardening is probably the ground zero of our thoughts and ideas, especially in the garden.
Venus Williams, who's the executive director of Alice's Garden, would be with us right now, but for the fact that she's leading a reading circle in Alice's Garden right now. And I think, Manon, the point you made there is so perfect, which is when you go to Venus, who's, the leader of Alice's Garden, what she'll say, which I think is the kind of leadership we need, is whether it's an idea or a plant, she'll help you plant that, but it's then going to be your job to tend it, right? So she's not going to say to you, give me your idea and I'll take it over. She helps people grow their ideas, which is a beautiful analogy and metaphor for what happens in the garden, both in terms of the produce that grows as well as the people and community that grow there.
Yep, absolutely. Whether it's veganism, whether it's juicing, and Manon, you can start. What does it mean for our communities that we're having these very vibrant conversations about this level of wellness? This is wellness in another conversation. This is not just simply exercise. It's not just making sure to eat a salad for dinner. We're talking about veganism. We're talking about juicing. Make some sense out of this for us. Like, this is happening in remarkable ways in the African American community. What does all this mean?
Well, I think right now we're in a sobering movement, and our movement isn't just about Black power, because it is, right? Mm-hmm. But it's about being sober, moving into the movement and moving through the movement and moving past the movement of Black power. I think we have to realize that food is at the heart of most conversations, and food is also a soul conversation. You can sit down and you can drink some juice with somebody, or eat some vegan food, or just eat some regular food or whatever it is, and you don't have to say anything, and it's a conversation just through the ums and the ahs. So it's past the us discussing health and wellness through food and gardening is well past just, you know, exercising and all that stuff. It's a party. It's your spirit. It's feeling your spirit. That's what
Yeah.
we're supposed to do. We're supposed to fill up our spirit before we leave this place. That's number one. And I think people are now starting to realize that. Before, when we jumped into COVID, people were like drinking their heads off, you know.
Right.
But then we're starting to see, and we're starting to realize that we're losing people to this condition, whatever it is, COVID, coronavirus, whatever you could call it, right? People are dying. It's not super alarming, but it's really alarming. It's alarming enough that we are losing a lot of our older people to this by hook or crook. And I think those people that are leaving, including me, I lost my dad, not to COVID, but we know that because COVID is bringing people inside and sitting them down, and people are not as active, then those people are coming to the realization that life isn't just drinking and entertainment, man. Life can be sobering. And now we've come to this position in this life that we have to be sober and we have to have real conversations.
Absolutely.
You know, before we wrap up this section, I just wanted to finish with Zakiya. You know, you started your life in veganism 30 years ago. You indoctrinated your family into it. Maybe it took them a little bit of convincing, but now you provide food for people all over the community. Can you just talk a little bit about these next couple images that we're going to look at here? Some of these fine people and what they're doing that lies totally within your legacy. This is Vigo, and this is a celebrity chef. Just from having scrolled through her images on Instagram and Facebook, I'm like, give me some of that. That looks incredible. So tell us what we just saw there.
Okay. So as we talk about the journey to become plant-based, at the time that my husband and I had made the decision, and we made the decision based upon information that was being provided to us, as well as health reasons. My husband was told, by a doctor that he was borderline diabetic and with hypertension. And he had the option of either changing his diet or going on medication. And so we decided to go ahead and change our diet. I had already been changing, some in advance of that. But for him, it was like almost like, cold turkey in terms of things that he was no longer consuming. Anyway, when we made that decision, we had maybe 6 children, at home at the time. And the oldest, which is Jabari, he changed. And then my youngest, who was like 2 at the time, that was Yomi, he changed. He didn't have a choice. But two of them in between, Ajoya and Akil, the one you just saw the 2 pictures of, they resisted the most. Joya would sneak food. She would have her friends bring her meat. She would do all kinds.
Meatballs in her purse.
Yeah, she would do all kinds of things. She would do all kinds of measures to be defiant, even to the point that we were in a park one day and she ate a brat off somebody else's grill, a meat brat off somebody else's grill. And she had an allergic reaction to it. And we wound up having to rush her to the hospital because her throat was closed up. It was funny at first, but then it got to be real serious. So she had to she wound up in the emergency room. She is now a celebrity vegan chef. She's won so many contests for her mac and cheese and other things. She beat out other chefs in contests who were making, meat, kind of dishes. She's just that good. And then the other one, Akil, he was the same way. He resisted. He found all kinds of ways to go ahead and get meat, because the rule was you couldn't eat meat in the house, but whatever you do outside, that was up to you. He too now is a vegan chef, phenomenal, has his own truck, and you saw a picture of that before. Vigo and his business, his wife turns out some phenomenal cakes. I don't know if you saw that on the website, Adam, but they're doing well, and both of them are located in Charlotte. Akil left his job as a general manager for a restaurant chain to go ahead and start his own business. Joya, is totally self-sustaining. Both of them are self-sustaining based on, their own business. So I'm really proud of them. I'm proud of all of my children, but those two in particular as vegan chefs.
Don't tell your children this, but Kill was one of my favorite. Don't let this leak out to Jabari. He probably
unsolicited, Manan.
Yeah,
You're talking to a vegan and you're starting beef for no reason. Look at you, Manan. Get out of here.
And we on Facebook.
Oh.
Yeah, it's too late. You did it. But anyway, yeah. But that was, as I said, we've had some really, really interesting journeys. And one of the things I want to say too, because Rob, you've mentioned veganism, and I want to make a distinction between veganism and plant-based. All right.
Sure, thank you.
Because some people who look at the whole thing about vegan and Manan, you talked about movements and stuff. They look, it's all about animal rights and lots of different things, but it can be used to divide us. And I don't get into that argument, whatsoever. If you want to say plant-based because that's what we're talking about as it relates to food, then so be it. But there's some people who take the whole concept of veganism to a whole nother place, again, that can create divisions. And I'm not about that. When you talk about food for gathering, one of the things for sure is that when you serve vegan food, everybody can eat. Okay. When we come to the table, everybody can eat. And so that's what I stand for.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah.